Well, hello and welcome to today's video. I hope you guys are well now. Today I have a question for you, and that question is, are you less of a photographer if you refuse to specialise? Can you really be a jack of all trades and still be a master of some? Well, hello. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name's Gary. I've been a photographer here on YouTube for 7 or 8 years, and I've been a photographer for a lot longer than that. And of course, if you're not new here and you're coming back, welcome back. I hope you guys are well. Thank you so much for tuning in again, and I hope you enjoy this episode of Norman's Wisdom. So let me give you a little bit of context around why I'm deciding to have this conversation. So I'm looking at redoing my website and getting it up and running and back online. And as part of that, um, it makes you question who you are as a photographer. What do you do? Now, you will know if you know me that I've been a photographer for a long time. But if you know me from this YouTube channel, for instance, you'll know that not only do I do landscape, which is where I started, I also shoot a lot of woodland. I shoot a lot of street photography, and I also shoot quite a bit of wildlife photography. And along with that, I've also shot sport photography, and I've shot a bit of portraiture, and I've shot some documentary photography. So I've done quite a lot. And my portfolio, to be honest, reflects that. So if you look online at my Flickr feed or my Instagram feed, it's rather messy because there's no particular style that runs through it, because pretty much when I shoot a different style of photography, I'll post it straight up onto my feeds. And so what you get is you'll get a clump of street photography followed by a clump of woodland photography, followed by a little bit of wildlife photography, and then some landscape photography. And as you may well know, the photography community really sort of not looks down upon, but does have a bit of an issue with these jack of all trades photographers, to which I'm sure I fall into that category. You've only got to look online or look on YouTube, and there's someone telling you that you really, if you want to succeed, if you want to become a better photographer, if you want to move further in your photography career, shall we say, then you need to specialize, you need to find your niche, and you need to really hone in on that. So I asked the question, or I'm asking the question, is that necessarily true? Do you actually have to do that? And I've been doing a little bit of research, and I've been looking around, and certainly there are a number of pros and there are a number of cons to being a jack of all trades photographer or a non-specialist photographer. Certainly, some of the cons, for instance, you only have to look at some of the photographers on YouTube who do specialize in one genre, and specifically those who specialize in one area. They are looked upon, rightly or wrongly, as the experts for that particular area and that particular style of photography. So if you've got someone who only ever shoots wildlife and only ever shoots, let's say, birds in flight, then people are always going to go to that person and think you are the expert on birds in flight, regardless of whether someone else can shoot equally as good at images of birds in flight, but maybe they do other things as well. That those people who only specifically shoot that generally tend to be the ones who are looked upon as the experts. Um, Also, as I said, you if you shoot a lot of different things and you put them all online, you do have, maybe the perception is that you do have a weaker portfolio, because where's the style, where's the thread of style running through your images? Because if one day I'm shooting street and the next day I'm shooting landscape and I put them both up, how can people relate to those and go, oh, well, that landscape photography there is very similar in style to that street photography, because they're two totally separate genres? How do you do that with wildlife photography? How do you put a wildlife photograph up next to a landscape photograph and say, I can see this guy has a vision, I can see he has a specific style? It just doesn't really work, does it? Let's be honest. It's and that can lead to a perception that perhaps you've got, well, maybe you do, have a weaker portfolio. Maybe that's how it's looked upon. And also, maybe people will look at that and think that you have this inconsistency about you, where you don't have the concentration to actually just hone in and focus on one particular genre. Maybe they'll say, well, this guy or this person is a little bit flighty, because one minute they're shooting this, the next minute they're shooting that. And surely, if you want to become an expert at something, or you want to become known or respected at something, you have to shoot that one particular style. And maybe they look and think, well, this person just doesn't have the concentration levels or the gumption to stick at this one particular style. And if so, and if that is the truth, and if I perceive that, then let's say, for instance, why would I want to go to that person for advice? Why would I want to go to that person for a workshop? Why would I listen to what that person's got to say on that specific subject when he's shooting so many other different subjects? And all of these things combined lead you down the path to think that you'd rather go and take advice or have a workshop or listen to this specialist photographer. And while, all of those points are to a point valid, I would also put in a very strong counter argument. And I would say things like, for instance, doing lots of different styles of photography has given me huge creative growth. I'm a different photographer now than I was when I was only shooting landscapes, and I'm a different photographer in my shooting of landscapes due to my shooting of street and due to my shooting of wildlife. If you look at my street photography work, especially my early street photography work, is heavily influenced by the fact that I was a landscape photographer as well. And you can see the compositional elements of my landscape photography bleeding into my street photography. And equally, using my camera for street photography is a totally different experience from using it for landscape photography. And again, it's a totally different experience using it for wildlife photography. And there are skills that you pick up in each of these areas that benefit the other areas. So, for instance, the patience that I learned from wildlife photography bleeds into my landscape photography, bleeds into my street photography. Because if you're shooting wildlife and you're waiting for that bird to come along, you've got an awful long time to think. And if you just give up, pack up, and go away, you don't get the shot. And often that goes along with street photography. Because if I've found a composition, which, by the way, I've been helped to get that composition from the wildlife side, and I'm waiting for someone to come into that, the right person to come into that. If I hadn't had that experience of landscape photography, wildlife photography, I may have walked away from that shot, a good 15 minutes before I get the one shot, the one person walk into that shot that I really want. And wildlife photography has taught me that patience. The same way that street photography has taught me that I need to be thinking on my feet. So when it comes to wildlife photography, you've got to capture that decisive moment. So it might be a while coming, but when it comes, you need to be in total control of your camera, which is something you don't need in landscape. You don't need to be in control of your camera. You need to know how to set it up. You need to know how to use the settings, but you don't need to react often. Occasionally you do, but you don't need to react so fast that you need to have almost an intrinsic understanding of where every button is and what every button does on your camera to get that shot. So you pick up lots and lots of skills from all these different genres of photography. Look at portrait photography. You learn about lighting. You learn how lighting affects the subject, and that carries over into everything. But you learn how to control the light in portrait photography. Whereas in landscape photography or street photography or wildlife photography, you've got to work with that light, but you still need to understand the fundamentals of how that light works and how that light works interacting with your subject to get the shot you want. For instance, I will be walking along in street, when I'm on a street photography shoot, and it's very, very similar to a woodland photography shoot, because in woodland often I'm walking along, but I'm looking at the light. I'm looking at the light. I see the light. I see the light. There's the light, and there's a shot. Now it may take me 5 minutes to set that up and sit it on a tripod and wait to get that shot. Whereas with a street photography shot, I see the light, someone walks into it, I've got to take it immediately. But it's exactly the same principle, and they've been learned across the different genres, the different subjects, the different styles of photography. So I would argue that I'm probably a better photographer all round for this wide variety of genres that I shoot than someone who only ever shoots one genre of photography. And I would also say that there's a big thing as well about personal fulfillment. I want to enjoy my photography, and I feel like I have a creative brain. I have a brain that needs to be stimulated. I have a brain. This is why I take breaks. This is why I try new things. This is why many things across my channel have developed because I have this brain that has to try different things, has to do new things. So I never would have done some of the, the mockumentaries that I did if I didn't have that creative brain. I never would have started the photography podcast if I didn't have that creative brain. I never would have done all of these different things that I try out if I didn't have that creative brain. And part of that, I think, is the fact that I can't box myself into one genre. I can't be that person. I don't have that sort of analytical, scientific mind, basically, where it's just this is the foreground, this is the background, this is that. You have to do this to do that. I don't want to be that person. I want to be someone who goes out and tries lots of different things and learns new techniques and, you know, just makes different things work, I think. And that's really important to me. And that's a big part of me doing the different genres that I do, is that I get a lot of personal fulfillment from that. I don't do photography as a hobby to be stagnant in one area that I'm not interested in, because then it's no longer a hobby, is it? Now, that may be the case for someone who's doing it as a job, but I'd like to take that into, even if I was doing photography as a job, I don't want to be just going through the motions for the sake of it. If I take someone out on a workshop, for instance, I want to be as enthused on that workshop as I was on the very first one that I did, or if I'm going out on my own. And that's a really big, important part of photography for me. I don't want to be just turning up and doing it just for the sake of it because it's just a job. I would hate that. I would hate that. And I think that's a big part as well of why I do the different genres. And I think another thing is that you can break barriers down if you are a jack of all trades photographer. You can say, yeah, do you know what? You don't have to just specialize in that one area of photography to get that notoriety, get that respect, get that kudos from people to go, oh yeah, this person only ever does this, therefore they must be the best. Surely we should let our pictures do the talking. Look at my images, look at my landscape images. They don't stand up to the best. Of course they don't, because I'm not the best landscape photographer, not the best wildlife, I'm not the best woodland. But I don't think even honing in and focusing on a particular niche would make me the best. I just think I am who I am. And I think the fact that I do these different genres makes me unique, makes my photographs unique, because each of them has a flavour of the other. So you may look through my portfolio, and I may look through my portfolio and say, you know what, there's no common thread running through that portfolio. But actually there is. There is a common thread running through it. And that common thread is that everything that I've done has brought me to this photo. So this photo may not have been taken in the same way, or not even have been conceived, if I hadn't have done a different genre. Certainly with my landscape, with my street photography. A lot of my street photography images wouldn't even have been conceived. I wouldn't look at them in the way that I look at them if I hadn't had the years of experience as a landscape and woodland photographer. Certainly, certainly not. And again, I wouldn't, as I've already gone over, so you don't really want to hear this again, but I wouldn't maybe have got some of the shots that I've got in my street or in my landscape or in my wildlife if I didn't do the other genres and was taught and learnt myself the different techniques and the different styles of shot. So I think that's a really important point to make as well. And the last thing I'm probably going to say here is you need to own your identity. You need to own who you are. So if you are someone who takes lots of different images of lots of different genres, own it and be yourself. And it doesn't matter, I want to let my photos do the talking. I want my photos. So I want you to look at my photos and say, if you looked at just my street photography, would it matter if I did other photography alongside it if you thought my street photography is good? It shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter. And I would like to think that going out and shooting landscapes one day and going out and shooting streets the next day, it doesn't make you less of a photographer, but it actually makes you more of an artist. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little ramble there. Probably isn't going to connect with a lot of you, but I understand that, but that's fine. But it's just something that I wanted to talk about. I will actually be out tomorrow shooting some street photography. I've got my London A to Z to continue, and I've also got a couple of new vintage lenses that I really want to try out. So there'll be some more videos coming up very shortly on those. Anyway, in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time, and I will see you on the next one.